Today's adventure, we're going to find the grave of Nancy Green. 1 minute. This is Nancy Green. She is the original Aunt Jemima. And she's buried in this cemetery, in Oakwood Cemetery, here in the south side of Chicago. So I'm going to tell you her story, and we're going to try to find her grave. So come join me as we try to find the grave of Aunt Jemima. Okay guys, welcome back to another video today. We're at Oakwood Cemetery in the south side of Chicago. And I'm here because I want to find the grave of Nancy Green. Now Nancy Green was the original Aunt Jemima. And she was Aunt Jemima for nearly a decade. Beautiful mausoleum there. Moore is the name on that one. I don't see a date though. So Nancy Green has a pretty fascinating story. She was born into slavery in Montgomery County, Kentucky in the 1800s, the early 1800s. She was a servant to Charles Walker and his wife Amanda. This beautiful hair, Christine Gates, 1996. And she also served the next generation of Walkers whose sons later became well known as Chicago Circuit Court Judge Charles Walker and Dr. Samuel Walker. So after the Civil War, Green did earn her freedom, but she stayed on as a maid for the Walkers since she was already associated with that family. They treated her pretty well. And she moved with the Walkers from Kentucky to Chicago. Schiller's the name on this monument. I see 1921 on there. So she did take care of the Walker family while they were here in Chicago. So in 1890, a company called R.T. Davis Mill Company of St. Joseph, Michigan, was looking for someone to market their pancakes. And on the recommendation of Judge Walker, she was hired by R.T. Davis to represent the character Aunt Jemima, named after a song from a minstrel show. Across this road here. At the age of 59, Green made her debut as Aunt Jemima at the 1893 World's Columbian Expedition here in Chicago, of all places. So she stood behind the world's largest flour barrel that was 25 feet high. This is a nice old tombstone here. 1916 for Charles. And next to which she sleeps, Nellie, wife of Joseph Garabrandt, 1916 as well. She stood next to this 25-foot high barrel of flour and she made pancakes for the visitors. And she was so good at it, she appeared in fairs, festivals, flea markets, food shows, grocery stores. They really liked her character, and it was exactly what they were looking for. But after she refused to cross the ocean in the 1900 Paris expedition, they fired her. It's another nice tombstone. Wife of James Howard, Minnie Howard, 1915. So they fired her in 1900 and she was replaced by another person. According to the 1910 census, Green was still working as a residential housekeeper here in Chicago. Dear husband, that one says. Nice one there. She also served as a missionary for the Olivet Baptist Church here in Chicago. Unfortunately, August 30th, 1923, and her grave should be around here somewhere, guys. The 89-year-old Green was killed standing on a sidewalk. See, there was a traffic accident between two cars, and one of the vehicles hurtled onto the sidewalk and killed her. Now, she was buried, I'm looking for a grave while I'm walking here. She was buried in a paupers cemetery in this cemetery. I'm sorry, she was buried in a pauper's grave in this cemetery. Now, her grave went unmarked for a long time, and looks like we found it here. Here we go. Here is the grave of Nancy Green, the original Aunt Jemima, it says on here. 1834 to 1923. So this grave was unmarked and unknown until 2015. This was the pauper section of the cemetery. So the Bronzeville Historical Society, which is the area of the city we are in, spent 15 years finding Green's resting place. And finally, they were able to put a headstone here back in 2020. And this, after 15 years of searching, is the final resting spot of Nancy Green, also known as Aunt Jemima. How's that for a story you don't hear every day? So Aunt Jemima was a real person, although Aunt Jemima was a character, but a real person did play Aunt Jemima. And while we're in this cemetery, there is a veteran's stone here that appears to be so old I can't really read it. Interesting old brick wall. Really neat. Let me see if we could read this one over here. Jean James, it looks like. Pretty hard to read that. This whole area was the paupers section. And a lot of these graves in here are still unmarked. Okay, guys, that is the story of Nancy Green, Aunt Jemima. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch my video and exploring with me today a little history. A lot of people, even though Aunt Jemima is technically a fictional character, Aunt Jemima was played by a real person. And it's so nice that they spent that 15 years and found out exactly where she was buried and were able to honor her with a nice headstone. So again, thank you for joining me today. And as always, till next time, that's right, keep exploring.